Kathy asked me to come in today and talk with you a little bit about restoration of land after a weed infestation. So, um, you know, during the weed control battle, sometimes the area where the weeds, especially if it's a very infested, heavily infested area, you can end up with less than desirable vegetation after the noxious weed is eradicated. So there's several ways that we recommend that the area be restored. The first method I'm going to talk about is the tillage method. So what you would want to do is go in about this time of year using a disc or some sort of tillage equipment if the area is accessible to tillage equipment, large equipment such as tractors. Go ahead and till the area down this is after you have all the noxious weeds eradicated, and you want to restore it back to a native vegetation of some sort. So you want to come in and till that area, and then probably wait another month or so before you come back in and till it again. And the reason for that is so that if you get a flush of weeds or some other vegetation that tries to come back in, you can kill it with that second round of tillage. So after you get done with the second round of tillage, then you'll want to come in with a drill and try to go ahead and plant a cover crop. So here's an example of a drill. There's all kinds out there, but what you want to use for a cover crop in most cases is some sort of a sorghum. It can either be milo, which is a grain sorghum, or you can use a hay grazer such as Sudan or forage sorghum that will provide a fairly quick cover, and it'll get some height on it so that you are better protecting the soil from wind erosion and water erosion. So what you want to do then, if you end up with some weeds that do come in as your cover crop is growing, that gives you the opportunity to go in there and spray a herbicide over the top and kill those weeds while the cover crop is growing. Then in some cases 2 years of cover crop, it would probably be called for, because if you still have some of your noxious weeds that try to come back in, you'll want to give yourself that opportunity to come back in with the herbicide and try to knock those weeds down. But the cover crop will help firm up the seed bed and help to control those weeds. So in the event that you end up with 2 years of cover crop, at the end of after you plant your second cover crop, you'll let it grow throughout the summer and then leave it during the winter time. And sometime during the winter, our recommended planting dates, if you're planting a warm season grass, our recommended seeding dates are November 1 through May 20. And then for cool season grass, it's November 1 through April 30. So during that time frame, you can come in with a grass drill, and there's a forage sorghum or a Sudan picture. That's some of that stuff will get up over your head, especially the forage sorghum. You'll want to come in then with a grass drill and use a good seed mix, native species that are adapted to the area. And if you want, for those of you who like bees, you can include pollinator species in that seed mix. So the only thing that limits you to then, in coming years, you won't want to go in there and try to spray that new grass stand to kill out any weeds, because you'll also hurt your pollinators at the same time. But if you use a good grass drill with an agitator, depth bands, these drills are made for planting grass into firm seed beds, and they'll put them in at the depth that you set them at. If you go if you want your seed in not more than an inch deep, you can set your bands and it'll put it right in at that depth. So after you get done planting the grass for that first year after planting, then you'll want to try to control any weeds that try to come in, mainly by mowing. Whenever the weeds get up to about 8 to 12 inches tall, go in with a mower, clip them off. That'll help reduce that competition from the weeds and give the grass a better chance to establish. So, and you also want to exclude grazing from that area for at least the first 2 years in order to try to give that grass a chance to establish itself and get a good root hold. So here's a picture of a good established stand of native grasses. This is out in southeast El Paso County. We planted this grass mix through our EQIP program a few years ago, and it's really looking good today. It's a good established stand. The next method that you can use is to go with no-till. So after you get your area eradicated where the noxious weeds were, you can go in with a no-till drill. And the nice thing about a no-till drill is you don't have to drag a piece of equipment across there and turn up the soil and replant seed from other weeds and all that. This is a minimal disturbance to the soil, and it's a lot less cost than using tillage equipment. So if there's a chance that you have a no-till drill in the area that you can rent or borrow, whatever, this would be a good way to go in and plant your cover crop without having to turn the soil over. Before you use your drill to plant your cover crop, you will most likely want to go in with something such as Roundup and kill any vegetation that's there, just so that your cover crop seed has an opportunity to go ahead and get established. And the same thing as using the tillage, you want to go ahead and let that cover crop grow throughout the summer, and then the next winter or early spring come in with your grass drill and plant your grass seed mix. So this works well on especially more rangeland type situations where your ground is going to be a little harder, because these drills put about a couple 100 pounds per row of pressure down on that double disc opener so that it can get into the soil and put the seed where you need it. So, and the last method that you can use for restoration is to broadcast and rake. So if you have an area, say up in a mountainous area or very hilly, slopey, where you can't get any tillage equipment in there, it's just inaccessible, you can go in with crew if you want, or do it yourself, and you can broadcast that seed by hand or with a handheld spreader, and then use a rake to rake the seed into the soil. And it's recommended after you rake it, get the seed into the soil, then you want to put on a mulch cover, and that would be wood chips, straw, anything you can get that would put a good cover on top of that soil to help hold things in place. This method is not as preferred as the others because it is more labor intensive. It requires a higher seeding rate, and it's the disadvantages of it are that you get poorer seed distribution, loss of seed to the birds and the rodents, and it's a slower establishment process because the seed isn't actually put into the soil at a depth that you want it. It's just more at the surface within a quarter to half an inch, and it is more labor intensive. So whatever cover crop or whatever mulch cover you want to use on there, you want to try to get a good about 70% coverage with that on the soil surface.